Regulatory framework is needed because when we're looking from a waste management perspective, we see that voluntary approaches are very limited. That means they are limited in managing only selected packaging items, like for instance PET bottles, or they are limited in the stakeholders involved, or they are limited in only acting in several regions or cities. As the collection system and recycling system for packaging throughout an entire country always needs significant additional funding, this therefore cannot be achieved by voluntary initiatives like explained. And to ensure a sufficient EPR scheme that keeps a level playing field amongst all impacted stakeholders, a mandatory scheme with well-defined responsibilities and tasks is essentially needed. There are several relevant elements that have to be included in a legal framework. For example, goals, scope and definition of the involved packaging, and clear defined responsibilities and also penalties. Coming to general goals, the potential objectives include, for example, reducing packaging waste, promoting a circular economy and the collection system, promoting recycling and sustainable use of resources. Specific goals then could be assignment to individual stakeholders, for example, requirements for collection, recycling rates, the share of recycled material used in packaging instead of primary material. These could be goals for specific stakeholders, and they should be binding and must be clearly verifiable. Another element is the scope of packaging involved in the EPR scheme. The legal framework must set out which types of packaging produced by obliged companies are covered, and the framework can also be used to include specifically defined types of packaging that are normally not in the scope of an EPR, such as single-use plastic items. If any specific items are included in a legal framework, this must be explicitly listed in a relevant legal document. Involving the informal sector can also be an element of the legal framework. Any informal recycling activities should be integrated into an EPR scheme. The workers performing these activities should not lose their income and should be transferred into the formal EPR system. The regulatory basis for these schemes can make integration a legal requirement.
So local municipalities or local authorities usually are responsible for designing the physical system. Waste collection, waste transfer, processing or disposal. So it is in their hands to design the system, to make it easy, attractive, possible for people to participate. Then second, they are close to the citizen. So they know best how and where best to address the citizen. That can, for example, be universities or clubs or school, whatever fits the context best. Having said that, some of the work also needs to take place on the national level. So it really makes sense to harmonize some elements of the system on the national level. For example, it doesn't really make sense for every city to have their individual system of extended producer responsibility. It doesn't really make sense to have different systems of waste separation, so what people need to separate and how. That should be harmonized nationally. Deposit systems, something like that. And so there are elements that the municipalities can take over, and there are elements that national governments should take over. And so for the design of waste management systems and recycling systems in low and middle income countries, it is important to keep in mind that the systems that we have in industrialized countries can often not be transferred one-on-one. Because in these countries we often have large parts of the population that make their livelihoods from collecting different materials out of the waste and selling those materials. And so any system of a circular economy in general that is implemented in these contexts needs to keep in mind that there are a lot of people getting their livelihoods from this kind of work. And so the system needs to be adapted so as to include those people.
The Ministry of Environment and Forestry has issued Ministerial Regulations number 75, 2019 regarding the roadmap to waste reductions by producers. In a nutshell, this regulation would oblige producers to create a roadmap to reduce waste by 30% from 2020 to 2029. From the industry, there are several articles that we need to be further discussed, and we expect government able to accommodate. One of the biggest concerns in the regulation is the limitation of packaging volume and also labeling. Another point is that we understand from the regulations, it mentioned about the incentive in the form of award, publication of the assessment on the producer's good or poor performance. However, we would expect to have more attractive incentive scheme, such as financial or tax incentive, and also applying green procurement policy so that it will attract industry, implement and support the regulation so that the target to reduce packaging waste and increase the recycling rate can be achieved. The regulation gives the private sector several responsibility in reducing waste, such as providing waste storage facilities, monitoring and funding waste reduction program. This regulation holds manufacturer, brand owners, and its chains accountable for end-of-life impact of packaging. In this case, collective action by industry is needed as opposed to individual initiative. iPro will be the industry contribution to respond the ministry regulations in a comprehensive and collective manner, so that it will give the same level of playing field across the entire industry. Given current context on waste management in Indonesia, government should also support PRO to be cost-effective and efficient, not creating inefficient economy. So we hope our initiative through PRO also support SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and productions, through economic circular business model, where we achieve economic goals at the same time reduce our ecological footprint.